I've been talking a lot lately about all these bills that are making its way to the House, eventually to the Senate, and eventually to the president's desk. In many cases, I ask you guys to contact congressmen and senators. They need to hear from us. I know a lot of us out there realize that the people in Washington, D.C. truly don't care about we, the people. And they honestly don't. I'm not going to sit here and fool you guys and make you think that they're up there really doing the work of the people, because they're not. They're simply there, and the only reason why they even acknowledge us is because they want to be reelected. It's got nothing to do with any real caring of the people. However, we need to utilize that fear of them not being reelected and being booted out of there to our advantage. And with that is we can voice our opinion. We can voice our needs and our wants. We can voice the things that we feel like they need to do in order to prevent being voted out of office. There's actually several ways to contact congresspersons and senators. There's web forms, there's emailed letters, there's written letters, there's phone calls, and there's actual personal meetings. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through each one of these and give you the pros and cons of each one and why you may or may not want to select one. Web forms are probably the easiest thing for you and I, as well as the politician involved. It's simply a form on a website, and usually, in fact, I think all the time now, I don't think there's any other way that they do it. They all seem like they use the same people to build their websites. They'll have a drop-down box. Usually it'll be hot topics of current events, things that are happening now that are really up to the front of some people's minds. And what they do is you click that drop-down box, and then they do, of course, many times give you an area where you can elaborate and give your thoughts or whatever. Now, I will say this. This is the least effective form of communication with these politicians. In many cases, that drop-down box and whether you are for or against something is simply going to go into a column, into a box. Second Amendment, for instance. I myself might use one of these forms and I click Second Amendment, and they pretty much discern whether I'm for or against something, and they say, Paul is for gun control, or Paul is against gun control. And that's pretty much how they look at it. So you pretty much are just a number. You become a statistic. Using these online forums pretty much just lets you help them develop their numbers to see what people really want to do or don't want to do within their own respective voting areas. Another con about that is it's not personal. Again, in many cases, they're probably not going to read what you're saying other than to decide whether or not you're for or against something. You may have some anecdotes in there or some personal stories about your family, co-workers, or close friends. And usually they're going to glaze over that and really not even read it. So it's very ineffective as far as getting that personal touch across to that politician. And you can expect a form response from them. It's going to be a canned response. It doesn't matter if you go into a 4-page diatribe, which I recommend you do not do. You want to keep it relatively short and sweet while getting your point across. But it doesn't matter how much effort you put into letting them know how you feel about something. You're going to get a canned letter. You can go into everything you want to talk about, specifics, and what you're going to get in response is, Paul, I believe in the Second Amendment and protecting all people's constitutional rights, but I also feel like there's room for common sense gun reform. You see what I mean? It doesn't matter whether you're for or against something. If you're commenting on a specific issue, they're going to ride both sides of the fence with their emailed canned response to you guys. Another con that I see with these form letters is they're easy to overlook. Again, they don't really put a whole lot of emphasis on them. It's not something that they look forward to. Again, you're pretty much just a check mark in a column. So it's not personal at all. And again, it's so easy to overlook because there's no real statement being made here. Again, it's just an electronic form of communication. And again, you get that same type of treatment back in your own canned response. What are the pros? It's better than nothing. It's fast, it's easy. And I will say this, some of these items that get fast-tracked and pushed through the House or the Senate or pushed to the House floor or the Senate really, really fast, in many cases, some of the other techniques that we're going to talk about as far as contacting your congressman, they're slower. This is fast. So if something gets fast-tracked or pushed to the floor really, really fast, a lot of times this is one way to at least get to them quick because it's automatic. It's going to go right to them. So that is one of the positives to this. Next up, we've got emailed letters. This is a little more effective because you have a little bit more room to be personal. Now, in a lot of cases, having an actual email address that you can send just a regular standard email to that congressperson or senator, those have kind of gone away. These form letters that we just spoke of have kind of replaced the email. So you're not seeing an actual email address in a lot of cases where you can actually send an email like you and I might do to each other. You're just not going to see those anymore. So this is kind of a dying thing, but some of them still are out there and you can utilize that. And just like I stated on the form letters, they're easy to overlook because it is a very quick, easy form of communication. And it's easy for them to just dismiss that because it's not something they can touch or feel or hear. The pros about it, again, it's better than nothing. So you're going to get this point across to them. And again, it's fast, it's easy, and it's quick. Again, as I stated on the previous one, if something is being fast-tracked, this gives you a very quick ability to contact them immediately instead of waiting for snail mail or something like that to take effect and actually deliver something to their offices. The next one, and it's probably one of my favorites, is the written letter. Yes, a written letter. I know that sounds kind of crazy. Most of us probably haven't seen stamps themselves in a very, very long time. Written letters, it's something that they cannot ignore. It's going to come in. It's going to be a physical envelope with a physical piece of paper in it, and you have written on it. Now, you can take some of the form letters that I'm going to be posting and simply print them out and make sure you sign your name to them. It needs to have a personal touch to it. The better way to do it would be to handwrite your letter. Handwriting letters, it shows more of a sense of commitment from the constituent. It shows them that you are committed to getting your point across, no matter how long it takes you or how much trouble it is. It's just like we kind of frown on and look down on the form letters that they send us. When you send them a typed out letter, a lot of times there's an assumption that it's a form letter as well that you've taken and copied and pasted from somebody else. So it does lose its personal luster sometimes. Definitely the biggest con on that is going to be the time it takes to deliver it. We're talking about federal employees getting a physical piece of mail to Washington, D.C. Number one, we have to hope it gets there in a timely manner. Number two, we got to hope it gets there. Again, federal employees are not the most responsible people in the world, and there's no real repercussions whenever they screw up on their jobs. So they can throw a bag of mail away and it doesn't really matter. So that's the downside to it. You kind of don't know whether or not it got there. However, what I always recommend when I send a written letter to them is I request a response. I want a response. I want to know that they got my letter, and I want them to respond to me and let me know something. You can request that. Tell them I want a response from you. Be polite about it, but tell them that you want a response. The biggest benefits to that, you get your personal story across to them, and we'll get more into what you need to include in your letters in a minute, but you get your story across. You're able to make it personal. You're able to articulate in writing the things that are important to you. And again, as I stated earlier, very hard to overlook a piece of paper that comes in that's handwritten from you and from one of your voting constituents. Again, it shows a sense of commitment. The next one is phone calls. This, again, is one of my favorite techniques. The cons to that is that you're hardly ever, if ever, going to actually talk to the politician that you vote for or against in that office. It's almost always going to be an intern or somebody working the phones. I've never spoken to the congressman or senator that I've called for. Never. I've never actually spoken to them. So that's the downside to it. You've got a note taker, basically, somebody taking notes who's going to articulate that message that you're giving to them over to whoever that politician is that you're calling to speak to. The pro to this one, you can't overlook it. You know, the biggest thing that you have at your advantage right now is the passion in your voice. I don't mean the anger. I mean the passion. Be passionate about it. Let them know how you truly feel. Give them some anecdotes. Give them some life stories. Tell them some things about yourself and be passionate about it. Don't read it off a piece of paper. In all honesty, you can make notes, make quick checkmark notes if you have to, like kids, work. You know what I mean? Make a note that's reminding you that you need to talk about a topic, but don't write down what you want to tell them. Because when it gets very robotic and you're reading it off, they know that you're reading it off and it loses its passion. So just make a note of what you want to actually talk to them about and broach that subject and just elaborate as you want to, again, without writing it all on a piece of paper and simply repeating it and reading it off the paper. The biggest benefit to that is the time it's received. They get it right away. If a bill is being fast-tracked and it's going to the floor tomorrow, sometimes they do this, especially whenever they're trying to hoodwink us and get something thrown through or pushed through really fast. That's your advantage. call them. And a lot of times their phones are going to be tied up whenever these things are actually being fast tracked. Keep calling, keep calling, keep calling. Call them back as much as you can until you get them. That's your chance. That's your chance. Don't give up and say, well, there's enough people calling. No, we need to continue to call. They need to get inundated with these phone calls when they try to fast track some of these bills through. The most effective means of communicating with your politicians, believe it or not, a personal meeting with them. The biggest con to that is it's almost impossible to get. It's almost impossible to get. You're almost going to have to settle for meeting with one of the interns. They've all got local offices, and those local offices are there for a reason. Find out where your local office is for that senator or congressperson. Go to that office and actually talk to them. Sit down and talk to them. In some cases, you can actually assemble a group of people and tell them, hey, look, I've got a dozen people. They probably don't want to get too blindsided. So you probably don't want to get 50 people together because then it becomes a town hall meeting. But if you tell them you've got 6, 8, 10, a dozen people that want to meet with them and talk about a particular topic, you might very well get that actual politician to come talk to you, because then they're going to realize that this is a serious topic. And look, if they're in favor of that topic that you want to talk to them about, you're basically going to give them their talking points that they can use later on, because they're going to pretty much have an audience of educated people talking about that particular topic. And again, especially with guns, a lot of these politicians are pretty ignorant based on guns, how they work, the right terminology, what nomenclature to use. So in a lot of cases, they're getting their knowledge from us. So that personal meeting might actually be beneficial to that politician. So they may elect to actually do it. But again, your secondary option here, meet with their staff. Very easy to do that. And you can request that meeting. Simply ask for it. Hey, I want to talk to you guys in person. All these things are effective. All these things are better than nothing. Some better than others. But there's some tips that you want to use for all of these, whether you're writing a letter, talking to them in person, or on the phone. Be as thorough as you need to be to get your point across and to get your story across, but be as short as possible. What you don't want to do is waste a lot of their time, because believe it or not, they don't really care about you. They're looking to get off the phone as quickly as possible. They're looking to throw that handwritten letter in the trash as fast as possible. And of course, like I said, with the electronic communication, they're probably ignoring most of what you wrote anyway. So be as quick as you can, as short as you can, but as thorough as you can to get your point across, so that there's no misconception about what your position really is. Only include facts. Don't include things you've read on a meme, things you've seen on Twitter or Facebook. Don't do stuff like that. Don't say, I heard this. If you haven't vetted that fact, it's not a fact. So you want to include only facts, because they are going to disregard you as being some hack or some idiot out in the sticks somewhere, or some tinfoil hat wearing person. You want to come across as genuine and as well thought out as you possibly can. And again, that includes utilizing only facts when you speak to them. You want to tell them how laws can affect you. You want to be specific about that. Talk about your family. If a certain law, especially like a Second Amendment law, is going to affect you, tell them. Tell them, I have a sister-in-law that is recently divorced, and if you pass, HR 8, I'm not going to be able to loan her a gun to protect herself because of your crazy little red tape and all that kind of stuff. Be specific about that. Give them stories. Tell them specifically how these laws can negatively or positively, if it's something you're in favor of, how it can affect you and your family, your friends, your coworkers. It's always best to state your topic in the first paragraph. That way they know what you're talking about. State your topic and your position. Quick and to the point, and then you can elaborate after that. It goes without saying, but always be professional and courteous, but be unwavering and firm. They need to know where you stand and that you are not on the fence about this topic. They need to know that they can't give you some kind of rhetoric to change your mind. You have to be specific about that. Again, there's a delicate balance between being firm, but also being polite and courteous. But it's very easy to do. You just got to work on it to make sure you get that point across. Never, ever threaten them. Never. You can let them know that you and your coworkers, your family, your district would vote against the person, but you don't want to physically threaten them. You don't want to get ugly with them. Threats are not going to do any of us any good. They are going to disregard you in a heartbeat when you become threatening. Again, even if you have to let them know that you are willing to vote them out, don't use ugly language to say, I'm going to vote your blank out of here. Don't do that. You want to be as professional and courteous as you possibly can, again, while getting your point across. And as I stated earlier, always ask for a response. I don't care if you're emailing them, sending a form letter to them on their web page, writing a letter to them, talking to them on the phone. Whatever method you use to communicate to these politicians, tell them you want a response. Be polite. Don't ask them. Tell them you want a response because it is their job. Guys, they work for us. They work for us. And believe me, there's none of this costing them a penny. We're paying for everything. We pay their salaries. We pay for the people who are there. We pay their salaries as well. We're paying the rent at the place where they live, where they work. We pay their plane tickets. Everything involved, every cost involved, every letter that's written, every envelope that is stamped, you're already paying for. So get your money's worth and tell them, I need a response from you because I need to know what your position is. And I tell you what I ask for. I want written responses because I keep my responses that I get from them so that I can use them whenever they flip-flop and start to waver in the future on some of these items that are very important to me. Folks, I've talked on my live stream this past week about putting some letters out there that you guys can use and we all can use. I mean, I'm open to taking your letters as well. But I think that sometimes people don't know how to approach the correspondence that go to these politicians, so they simply don't do anything. I'm going to start posting on our website, legallyarmedamerica.com. I'll do it on Facebook and Gun District as well. But I'll start putting some of my form letters that I'm writing, that I'm sending. Now, obviously, I'll take out the personal stuff because that's where you need to put your own personal stuff in there. But I'm going to post some of the verbiage of the letters that I'm sending, and you guys are more than welcome to copy and paste my letters and use them as your own. And again, put your own personal stories in there, of course, your own personal information and your own politicians' names in there. I'm going to be doing a lot more of that here lately. Anytime something comes up, when I send my letter off, I will modify my letter and put it out there so you guys can utilize it as well. There's too many things coming up here recently, guys, that we got to stay on top of. And again, as I stated before, and I state all the time, these politicians really don't care about you and I. They honestly don't. Their biggest fear in life is being booted out of their job because it's a cake job. They're getting rich off these jobs. They don't want to lose their jobs. They may not really care about us, but they care about their jobs. We let them know that we will vote them out of office. They will listen.